Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
James, thank you for joining me on Brick by Brick. I appreciate having you.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
You know, I'm always interested in everything that you have going on. You've really been at the forefront for the last 15 years, 20 years, right? At technology and insurance, it's changing rapidly. You know, I know you're doing a speaking panel here at ITC. You're always doing those kind of things. Can you give me an overview of what you'll be presenting at ITC?
Sure. Well, great conference, big conference, a lot of topics. Certainly, I think AI now is to the point that it's overcovered. I know it's the point that it's overcovered, but we're going to be talking about driving better outcomes in claims. Terra, at its heart, is a claims and policy system. We built it because we saw an opening in the market, in particular in the area of workers' compensation insurance, to really drive dramatically better workflow and dramatically fewer manual steps than what is currently required in the market. Now, we're coming into this talk, we're going to really be talking about how not just AI, but automation and integration and APIs can be used to solve like the real world problems of your average desk adjuster. Like the person, if you think about insurance, like at the heart of it is adjusters and underwriters.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of other people around that. You certainly have actuaries, then you have executives, and you have finance people, investment people, but there's a huge workforce who perform a ton of menial tasks that, if they were freed up from those manual tasks, would be able to focus more on the claimant. And so that's really what our conversation today is about how we can leverage automation, integration, intelligence, and certainly artificial intelligence to some extent, but also just good old-fashioned workflow software to kill the spreadsheets and the manual data entry, et cetera. 'Cause that's really where I've spent the last 20 years. I started this business in 2001 in my dorm room at Texas A&M, near Longhorn. I love we got two Texas guys here.
Yeah, right.
But, and stumbled into insurance 20 years ago and have spent the last 20 years just trying to cut out manual tasks.
So, what I like is when you talk about integrations and APIs, AI, all that stuff, it's like the insurance industry has been connecting systems for a while, but now it's actually connecting the workflows, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get down to the workflow level. That's where all technology is at, trying to get to right now.
And they're connecting the individual data points, and that's another really big difference. Now, people say like insurance is slow to adopt. Not really. Insurance was one of the very first industries to get off of paper and move to mainframe systems. In fact, they have an innovator's dilemma. I spent 12 years in a construction startup called SmartBid that was a bidding system for construction, and we sold it in 2018. Construction is a slow adopter.
Yes.
Like literally, there's still like half of companies are still using paper and Excel spreadsheets.
Absolutely.
That is not the case in insurance. Their problem is that they innovated really early. They got onto mainframe systems. Many of those are still being used. If you go to the average big carrier, even startup MGAs end up with this problem. They'll end up with several core systems. Some of the big legacy carriers have 32 systems involved.
And they'll spend all their time just getting all the same data into this next system over and over.
And then trying to figure out where's the master set of data that's driving your underwriting decisions, your quote bind and pay transactions, your renewals. There's a lot of these kind of transactions where you're literally querying 32 systems and not all the data always lines up. So we're spending a lot of time connecting systems, now connecting data, and then trying to make sense of it. But of course, what AI is allowing us to do now that we really have not been able to do effectively until now is to do something with the exabytes of unstructured data.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like now we can actually touch photos, videos, and free text and do something intelligent with it.
Yeah. I mean, we've been collecting data in the insurance industry for the last 10 years. It's been collect, connect, but not doing anything with that, because then you have all this unstructured data that you can't actually utilize.
Yeah. You have narratives, you have adjuster notes, you have underwriter notes, you have on claims, you'll have documents, PDFs, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, all submitted with claims. You have the exact same data submitted with the submittal for their initial quote bind pay or their renewals. I mean, there's a ton of data. And then when you get into claims, I love talking about claims because it's so complex in some way.
Yeah.
I always bristle when people say like a claim's a claim. A claim is not a claim.
Right.
A work comp claim is very different than a commercial auto claim. Work comp claims can last 120 years. Literally, they can survive the person who's injured and their surviving dependents. So you have some some things you have to deal with there that are very different. And being able to determine early if a claim is going to be a huge problem or a little problem allows you to focus limited adjuster time on the most risky claims, which until this point, riskiness was determined by the adjuster, only by the adjuster.
And after they've already spent time on the claim itself.
Yeah, exactly. And now we can do a whole lot of triage and say, hey, look, you might want to really look at these, like dive into it, because these are they're the submarines, right? They're the icebergs. They look small up top, but they're big under the water and they can sink your ship. And so that's what we're discussing a lot of that today.
That's really interesting. It's also interesting to understand that the insurance industry, carriers, those people have adopted technology early, and then some of the industries they service. So some of the technology problem is between the insurance organizations and the actual industries they sell insurance to, right? In the case of construction, that communication between insurance and construction, that's where the gap actually lies in a lot of cases, or property management or other things like that.
Yeah, when you get into what everyone really wants, I mean, everyone, the carrier, the third-party administrator, most importantly, the employer, in workers' comp, the employer, or if it's property or auto, the insured, everybody wants the claim to never happen. The only people that want the claim to happen are the people that only make money if there's a claim.
Right.
Which would be the claim service professionals.
Yes, right. Yep.
So everyone else does not want the claim to happen. So the best way to manage losses is to not have the loss. And so that's really where you're driving into what you're talking about as what needs to be a good partnership on loss control, on loss prevention, on education. And certainly my 12 years in construction, we built a lot of software around triaging and identifying companies and their practices to identify if they were a good risk or not.
Yeah, right.
That was actually at the heart of our bidding and pre-qual software back then. So there needs to be a good partnership, and it is really helpful if you understand the industry you're selling insurance to. It is really hard if you try to be a generalist in insurance.
Yes.
Because you don't understand the drivers that are actually pushing.
Yeah, because it looks like from a 10,000 foot view, it kind of looks the same, but once you go a little down, it's so specific and so nuanced. It's easy to understand, hard to master overall.
It's easy to understand general topics, but just looking at the difference between workers' compensation, commercial auto, commercial trucking.
Yes, is insane.
It's very different. Their renewal packages are very different. Their claims are very different. Highly, highly, highly litigious. They get sued. If they bump a curb, they get sued. Right. And then you go into commercial property is different than commercial personal lines property, and not just a little bit different. It can be really different.
Yeah,
because
very
the buildings are fundamentally different. They react differently to flood water. They react differently to fire.
Use case is different.
Yeah, exactly. So it helps if you understand the nuance between the lines that you're working in and the industries you serve.
One question I had, you're sort of known for creating community around innovation in this space. What role do you play in fostering innovation with like the broader risk management community? Do you view your job as being an advocate of technology? What do you enjoy that part? Is it just marketing for your company? Like what is it that really pushes you and speaks to that?
In the hundreds of podcast interviews, no one's ever asked me that question. So I really appreciate that question. I love the level 10 love teaching.
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing to do is to teach. And really, when I sell software or my services, I teach first. And I've keynoted 450 conferences now, roughly. And my rules are that you entertain people so they don't fall asleep, but then you spend the rest of the time educating them. And in the last minute, you can tell them what you do. But you stay away from that because you're there to teach.
Right.
So I have always viewed my role to teach, to try and educate people on the benefits of being innovative in general, and then using technology as part of your innovation strategy. There's a lot of ways to be super innovative without deploying technology. I mean, I have a boatload of examples of that, some in my book, where I talk about like some of my clients that did the most innovative things that did not involve technology. But absolutely, I think anybody who's in technology should have an obligation to teach first, because we work in a very technical field that can be very complicated to understand.
And a lot of times we're selling to people who are very risk adverse in general, right?
Oh, insurance companies are the most risk averse people on the planet, right? Because they actually calculate and understand how risky
and they know how much risk actually happens every day.
Yeah, they know.
Like a cop.
Yes. In fact, talking to an insurance professional, like someone who's really in insurance, not on the outskirts, like It's just like talking to my cop friends. Police officers have like these horror stories of like all the bad things that can happen to you.
Right.
And insurance professionals have these horror stories of all the bad things that can happen to you. So it ends up driving this risk-averse mindset. It's kind of like accounting. I got a degree in accounting from A&M.
Okay, good. You can talk about it then.
I can talk about this. Creative accountants go to jail. If you're talking to a group of accountants and you're telling them to be creative and innovative, they're like, creative and innovative accountants drove Enron.
Yeah, right.
And they went to jail.
Right.
You know, we're gonna color in the lines because that's what we're designed. That's what we're trained to do.
That's actually what you want us to do.
It's actually what you want us to do. You want ideally, and I've met people who wanted accountants to draw outside the lines, and I'm like, you're asking them to go to jail, and you're asking yourself to go to jail.
Right.
And so I think that's something that we have to remember and respect. One of my biggest accounts, one of their core values is stability. And having had insurance clients of mine go bankrupt because they had plus 100 combined ratios,
right,
and they ended up, their losses far exceeded reserves and reinsurance, and they went belly up. I've had that happen. It's horrifying. And so I actually really value the fact that good insurance companies are stable. And so you have to lovingly educate them as to how you can play inside that risk.
It's actually
portfolio.
make change happen. It's not just sign off on an innovation thing or spin up an innovation arm in your
innovation in name only is generally a political move at a lot of companies,
right,
in a lot of industries. And there's a lot of that. I mean, there's so much money wasted on innovation in name only. There's so many AI initiatives right now that will never come to market,
right,
that will never be utilized.
They don't start with the practical use case, right?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is like half of our adjusters spend their time just answering phone calls from medical providers on when their bills are going to get paid.
Right.
And that problem can be solved with a bill lookup portal instead of a really complicated AI solution. So like, if you really start with studying the problem, like the old saying that's misattributed to Albert Einstein, he did not say this, but he's quoted as saying this: if you have an hour to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes studying the problem and 5 minutes studying the solution.
Yeah, right.
We really have a challenge with that in a shiny object industry. And in a conference like ITC, we're like, ooh, shiny object. Well, let's spend a lot of time studying the problem. Like, sit at a cubicle. I mean, I want to challenge anyone here to sit at a cubicle with an adjuster and an underwriter for days and watch them do their job.
Yeah, understanding the problem space is absolutely critical. I have here on that you're the vice chair of the Texas Southern University. How's that experience? I mean, we talked about education. Is that just part of that love?
It is. I love teaching. I think that education is the largest single driver, education and an honest government.
Yeah.
Because you have countries with great educational systems and dishonest governments that have super low GDP output because people give up when there's not a chance.
Yeah, there's no place for them to go.
Yeah, when there's no place for them to go and there's not a chance of actually being successful, they give up on production. But if you look at high GDP outputs in America, we kick everyone in the butt on GDP per capita. I mean, we do. It's like, it's not even close. Like, we're at like $78,000 per head on GDP per capita.
Yes.
And France is at like mid 40s. Latin America is in the teens to 20s. I mean, we just destroy other countries on GDP per capita. And it's because we have a great educational system and we have a mostly honest government.
Yes.
And when they're not honest, we have a free press to call them out on that. And so those things combined together are super important. I love teaching. I think it's really fun. I think it's a beautiful thing, in particular at the university level. And you and I both went to grad school.
Yeah.
Grad school's awesome because you're super focused. You're only studying what you dreamed of studying. So Texas Southern University was founded in 1927. We're in our 97th year of operations. We're about to turn 100. We're really excited about that.
That's great.
And we're a historically Black college and university, originally college, now university, in Houston, Texas. It's one of 2 HBCUs in Texas. It is obviously a public institution. So Governor Abbott appointed me to the board in 2020. He reappointed me last year, and I was confirmed by the state Senate for another 6-year term. So I'm on until February of 2029. I get to serve with 8 amazing fellow regents. And we're there to help 9,000 students transform their lives. Over 80% of our students are Pell Grant eligible, which means they really don't have a lot of financial resources.
Right.
So you're talking about
they're in a risk group of their own too.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that go along with that. Many of them do have amazing family resources, but many of our students, come from single parent households, single income households. And they also are Pell Grant eligible, which means they don't have the financial resources. They're on scholarship or they're working through college. Many of them are still first generation college attendees. So we are serving the underserved.
Yeah.
And our job is to upgrade their firmware, right? And I love it. I love the software terms. We're there to upgrade their firmware to enable them to make radically more money and have a radically more fulfilling life than if they had never come to school at Texas Southern. So we've got some amazing programs. I benefited greatly from an HBCU because I went to a public high school in North Baton Rouge, right next to Southern University.
Right.
In 1993, and you know the timeline on this, Southern gave us a T1 internet connection. Everyone was on dial-up. We were on high speed, and it turned our school into this amazing computer science and technology incubator.
That's amazing.
We had dozens of companies spin out of it, including me. My co-founder and I went to high school there. And it was because of the generosity of an HBCU that wanted to help a school in their neighborhood. And so it's really exciting to be able to give back. I'm a pilot. I fly airplanes every week. I'm obsessed with aviation. We have an aviation program at Texas Southern. We went from 16 students to 107 in 2 years.
Wow.
And we are kicking butt and taking names in aviation. We're kicking butt and taking names. We have a great law school. We have a great school of pharmacy, #2 pharmacy school in the state of Texas. And Texas is a great market to serve, 28 million people.
I know.
$2.7 trillion GDP. If we were our own country, we'd be the 8th largest country on the planet.
Something I find really refreshing is tying business outcomes to ethical, good decision making. Like this is really powerful.
If you don't have integrity in decision making, right? Like integrity and ethics and decision making at the top of any organization or any government, everyone gives up. And so the areas I've been really focused on, and again, at the school, that's my volunteer gig, right? I mean, I spend 50 to 60 hours a week on JBKnowledge and Terra, and then my spare time goes to helping be on the board, right? I'm not an administrator, I'm on the board. And so that's setting vision, raising money, dealing with the government. But we've got to have as a board, all boards have to be integrity-filled boards that are in it for anything but themselves.
And the mission of the
Yeah,
organization.
the mission of the organization. For us, that is to serve the underserved. That is to upgrade these students' firmware and to increase the available supply of labor to the market in Texas primarily, and of course to the rest of the world. So we're there to help the students. We're also there to help the state of Texas by having super productive citizens.
Yeah, that people want to go to that school.
Yeah, if they're well-educated, if you have a well-educated population, then you don't have nearly as many workforce labor issues, as long as you're educating them in the needs of the market.
Right. About that, one thing I want to just double click on is, I have a lot of risk managers on the podcast. It's primarily a risk management podcast, right? And then I bring technologists on who are doing innovative things and helping shape the future of this industry. One of the things that risk managers are worried about is an aging population, people not coming in from colleges to want to join the insurance industry or join risk management. Are you seeing that young people are excited about the possibilities in insurance and the possibilities of going into risk management and things like that?
When we tell them about it, they are. And so I'll say that there's 7 programs. I only have context here in Texas. So pardon that I'm not talking really in broader terms.
Yeah.
But the Insurance Council of Texas, which is the industry group representing insurance carriers in Texas, they work very closely with the 7 universities that actually have risk management programs. Interestingly, UT and A&M, the 2 flagship schools, are not those schools. And remember, there's 80,000 students each at those schools. So I'm working very closely with our new president at Texas Southern to try and take the insurance classes we have in our finance department and evolve it into a program that is finance and risk management. I think really, and that there's a private university in San Antonio, Texas, that really I think probably has it dialed in the best, is they evolved their finance department at their business school into finance and risk management. And then they loaded it up with insurance classes to acknowledge that the other half of the financial services industry, other than banking and investment banking, is insurance. It's the other half. And it's the one that makes more money too, by the way. I mean,
more stable, more building a life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not dogging banking. I'm not dogging investment banking, but like insurance is where it's at.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition over in that other
Exactly.
area.
So that's what we're doing at the university. That is if you want to increase the workforce, you have to grab them when they're 18, educate them on, hey man, this is a huge industry. It's much bigger than you thought it could be. It can be a wonderful life, a wonderful career. And by the way, you solve this huge societal issue that insurance solves. And that is we enable people to conduct activities that they would not conduct if they didn't have insurance to do it.
Right. So you help build the built world. That's why
100%.
So my dad was a longshoreman, I'm a technologist. This is the first role as a technologist where I've ever felt like I'm actually doing something to the world around me.
Yeah, longshoreman, great example. High risk industry, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on ports and docks. That's primarily workers' compensation insurance.
Yes,
on
right.
long short.
I know a lot of people who've had it.
Yeah, regulated by the U.S. Department of Labor, not by a state, because it's federally regulated, super complex, but it solves this critical strategic need. And that is, if they didn't have insurance, we wouldn't receive shipments from abroad, which would be a huge problem.
Yeah.
Anytime you see like a port shutdown, you're like, oh my God, we're not getting any cars, we're not getting any parts, we're not getting any semiconductors. And insurance enables that transaction to occur, right? So it is really neat. But the key is to explain it to 18-year-olds in a way that gets them excited, and then present a program that allows them to have choices, which is why I like, from an educational perspective, combining risk management programs with finance. So they have a choice. And they can say, hey, I can do investment banking or insurance, and I'm going to get a great education in insurance. We already offer insurance classes at Texas Southern. My goal is to beef it up.
Okay, let's pivot to just your business. Technology, you've been around a while.
Yeah, 45 now. I've been writing code since I was 11.
So the company's gone through iterations. You went through COVID.
Yep.
You're going through this. What kind of challenges are facing in insurtech startups, insurance technology companies? What made you able to weather those storms where others could not?
Bootstrapping, baby.
Okay.
So I'll say this. I wrote a book called Be Your Own VC, 10 Bootstrapping Principles. So I am like a militant bootstrapper. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, about a third of my videos are about that and 2/3 are about insurance. And it's because in chapter 8 of my book, I talk about bootstrapped innovation at insurance companies, and I pull out specific companies that gave me case studies. The number one rule of business, the number one is to survive. And the number one way to survive is to generate more cash than you consume. And
very European of you.
Yes. And the number one way to do that is to sock cash in the savings and not have debt and not have investors that are in synthetic timelines, like 3 or 5 year fund windows. So now I am not anti-VC. I think VC plays a really critical role. I'm a limited partner for VC funds. So, I actually invest money in VC funds.
Right.
But the VC funds I'm with value bootstrap companies coming to them when they get to 5 to 7 million ARR and then juicing their growth, but taking a capital efficient business and then growing it. So I think the last 3 years, the last 2 years really has been the VC winter. Once crypto collapsed, it launched a scary VC winter where it was super hard to go from a seed round to an A round.
Correct.
Or an A to a B if you were at the end of your A round. God help you in the last 2 years if you were trying to raise money, because it got way more challenging. And so you had a lot of shakeouts. And the sad reality, everybody does a press release when they raise a round. Nobody does a press release when they run out of cash. And so you don't hear it. You don't hear about all the companies that went under, but a bunch of funded companies went under because they could not bring their company to a break even or cash generation.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not dogging VC funded companies. I think there's a really good and distinct role.
Really, it's the founders of those companies that took VC money that didn't know how to operate it or use it effectively or knew what they were getting themselves into.
In those cases,
because that narrative is pretty predominant among CEOs and executives.
Yeah, you gotta run it. No matter what your funding mechanism is for your business, you need to run a capital efficient company if you want to survive.
Yeah.
So 23 years of this. We started with $5,000 in my dorm room at Texas A&M. We took a $63,000 loan. Then we took some debt from Dell Computer Company to buy some servers. We paid all of our debt off within 2 years by 2003. All of our debt, like all $60,000, $70,000 of it. And we've eaten our own dog food ever since then, right? We run off our own funds ever since then. And we were able to build multiple SaaS companies. We were able to have a fantastic exit. We were able to really do some great things around professional services, and of course we use our—
that professional services were not attractive. Now every company has a multi-million-dollar service arm.
Exactly, but no one here liked talking about services because services is the boring, dirty work that's like super hard.
Technology is supposed to eliminate services.
It is, but the reality is there's a lot of things that have to be done to enable all of this to work. And so we've been able to build a great business. JBKnowledge is a software development augmentation. So we do managed maintenance of legacy applications. We do new app development, and then we do a whole bunch of data work for the carriers, TPAs, MGAs, PBMs. We've built systems that run, massive companies, and in the process learned a lot. And in the process, we're able to deliver a lot of value because there's not always a fit with the stuff that's on the market off the shelf.
A last question. You've run multiple ventures. We just talked about that. What kind of advice are you going to give to organizations in the insurance technology space around places that you think there needs to be innovation, where you think companies do need to come in and do something different or new or rethink?
Yeah, I would just encourage all the technology companies at ITC to spend more time studying their users and really looking. So, I can't identify the specific areas. I know where my specific areas that I'm working on, and, in claims, you really look at where adjuster time, field adjuster time, desk adjuster time, where's the time going? There's a lot of time flying out the window.
Yeah, if you sit with a user and you're watching them, you assume that this user, because they're allowing you to watch them, is probably in the top 10%. And you can see the waste in their use, how they navigate things. Then you can imagine just everyone else.
You can imagine the users they're not going to ever put you in front of.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so really study the problem, study the user, study their utilization of the software, put tools in your software that lets you study how long they sit there, how long they wait, what they do, what their transaction path is through the product, and really treat it like a science experiment, right? You're forming a hypothesis. You have to test and prove that hypothesis. And so there's just a ton of waste. I mean, my favorite book on lean, and I love studying lean, is called 2 Second Lean.
Yep.
And in 2 Second Lean, the author says that we are 24/7 waste generators. And the fact that humans are, because we are, creates opportunity for every single company here to go and create innovative point solutions. And of course, in our case, we're creating an innovative core system for workers' compensation claims and policy software. We decided after running a point solution and selling it that we wanted to build the big enchilada, right?
Yeah, the platform.
Yeah, we wanted to build the whole platform, the core system, and go tackle the big problem, because the reality is core systems are overpriced. Their contract terms suck, and they lock you into multi-year golden handcuffs.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of problems in the core system space, and we're stepping in with an implementation guarantee where we don't charge them setup fees till after they're live. We don't charge them licensing till after they're live, and there's no contracts. So you can be innovative outside of your product. You can be innovative.
Yeah, and your GTM.
Yeah, just your go-to-market strategy. You can be super innovative, and you can just remove all the barriers and take the golden handcuffs off your client, and then convince them to stay every quarter instead of make them
earn
stay.
them.
Yeah, earn them all the time, which is what we do. Our software outsourcing business and in JBKnowledge, 23 years of this business, we have never had a long-term contract. All of our clients are always month to month, and we earn that business every single month.
So you were mentioning about being a pilot, and I think that's fascinating. Our audience is risk managers. How does being a pilot inform the way that you look at risk?
Well, aviation is just an amazing industry. The best thing in aviation in regards to risk management is that we have laws in place that protect pilots who self-report issues that occur and have bad events. If you self-report it, you're immune from prosecution on the self-reporting. So we have a NASA system that, interestingly, NASA runs.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think NASA would run, I thought the FAA would run it. But you can file a NASA report when things happen. And the government can't prosecute you for whatever happened. And so if you have a runway excursion where you run off the runway, or you have an issue in flight where something bad happens, or you make a mistake or something bad happens, you go file a NASA report. And then the really beautiful thing is everyone reads those. And then we all share in what happens in those reports. There's a great book on this called Black Box Thinking, where it contrasts the medical industry with the aviation industry.
Right.
In medicine, doctors are not immune from prosecution, so they do not share when bad things happen. In aviation, we share every bad thing that happens,
right?
Because we all want to learn. And so I still read. I mean, I fly around 300 to 350 hours a year, which is a lot to fly.
Right.
I'm a 2,000-hour commercial pilot. I have 7 ratings, and so I can fly a lot of things with wings, from a seaplane to a single engine, multi-engine, stuff that flies at 40,000 feet, stuff that flies at 400 feet. And it's a wonderful hobby. It's a wonderful pastime. But it teaches you a lot of things, like the importance of having checklists, the importance of, even if you know how to do something and you've done it 1,000 times. I've landed a plane 1,500 times,
right? And
I still follow my pre-landing checklist. And how many times in business do we say that we know something, and we don't follow
the checklist, and you never look at it,
and you miss it? You know why? Because this firmware, this hardware, and the software that runs it is flawed.
Flawed, exactly.
It is not, but we do not have perfect recollection. In fact, a lot of studies show that we have terribly flawed recollection. And so the importance of checklists is really up there. Also, the importance of studying your mistakes, studying other people's mistakes, and learning from them.
Yeah.
Because then you'll become a better pilot.
That was one of the ideas for the podcast, was when I came to these events for risk managers, they shared knowledge, but then they went back to their thing, and then nobody shares any knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And they're not an industry out here talking on podcasts that often. It's not that, it's new for them. And so it's like, how do you make them share knowledge the whole time and like strengthen the very fabric of the industry?
Yeah, well, one of the core things, if you want people to share their mistakes, is you have to protect them. That's the number one thing. If we as pilots did not have legal protections, we would not report what's going on.
Right.
Like, it's just the way it is. So the federal government knew that. They federally regulate aviation. It's not regulated at the state level, which is a wonderful thing. And they said, you're protected. They created an environment where we're free from retribution, right? Where we can share our mistakes. You can do that in your companies. You can create an environment where if people self-report, inside your company by policy, that they're protected if they report. And especially around a safety culture, and that's what they care about, is like safety reporting is you've got to protect them first. Once you protect them, after they're protected, then you can educate them on the benefits of sharing accidents and the benefits of studying other people's mistakes. So you got to go to do both things.
Yeah.
If they share what they do, but they don't study what other people do, you still don't have a culture of safety. But in aviation, we do both. We have the Air Safety Institute. And what they do is they create accident recreation videos.
Yeah.
Like they'll go recreate the accident. I can't tell you how many guys, and I was a student pilot when JFK Jr. went down.
Yeah.
How many videos have been made of that? And look, that was a series of bad decisions. That machinery did not fail. He was legally allowed to fly that night, but he shouldn't have.
Right. He should have made a different decision.
He should have waited till the morning. And there was a series of things that happened, in particular, a strong sense of get there-itis that got to him. Well, me studying that kept me from flying twice. Like I was in a situation, I was like, this situation is just like that one that JFK Jr. was in. I need to stay on the ground. Like right now, I need to not leave.
Yeah.
The best decision you can make in flying is to not fly. That's the best decision you can make, is to say the weather's too bad. There's 2 problems with my plane that I know about that could lead me to have a bad problem. I'm not going to fly today. So the best decision an employee can have, and especially in high-risk industries, is to not conduct the activity when they know there's a high risk of an accident. And the only way to teach them to do that is to protect them and then educate them and encourage them to share.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, James.
Thanks. Appreciate yours.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to trustlayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.